For 7,000 years, humanity had known peace. The scars of the last interstellar war had long since faded into myth, retold only in archives and history classes no one paid attention to anymore. Earth, once the cradle of war, had become a symbol of balance, diplomacy, and cultural enlightenment within the Galactic Accord. The species once feared for its brutality was now revered for its art, its philosophy, its restraint. Aaron Vale, a historian serving on the Accord's Central Archive Station, often found it ironic. His ancestors had commanded dreadnoughts and terraformed worlds through force. Now, he curated interspecies poetry and translated extinct dialects. His voice was respected in the Council, not for its power, but its perspective. Earth had chosen the path of patience, and for thousands of years, that choice had held. The Accord had grown vast. Dozens of species contributed to the Great Peace, and humans had found their place, not at the top, not at the bottom, but as an integral part of something greater. The war machines slumbered in the lunar vaults. The last active battle fleet had been decommissioned 5 centuries ago. Humanity had shed its militant shell and become something else, something kinder. So when whispers of colony instability began surfacing, no one truly panicked. Trade disputes happened. Piracy flared up from time to time. Planets lost contact and came back online a week later with nothing more than a technical glitch to blame. The Council dismissed the early reports. The colonies were too distant. A relay malfunction. Communication delays were normal. But something didn't sit right with Aaron. He noticed a pattern. A specific type of colony, ones on the fringes, with large civilian populations and unusually high concentrations of youth, were the ones going dark. Terralese Prime was the tipping point. A lush, terraformed world housing 80,000 humans and almost 1 million non-human residents. It simply vanished. No warnings. No distress signals. Just silence. When Accord investigation drones finally reached orbit weeks later, they found a lifeless city grid and a single message burned into the bedrock near the equatorial launch field. They took the children. Panic cracked through the Council's chambers. Human representatives demanded answers. The Zorak Dominion, a long-standing Accord member and dominant military species, claimed ignorance. Their ambassador scoffed at the idea that anyone within their empire would act without permission. "Do not mistake the howling of your fear for evidence," he said, with all the arrogance of a predator that had grown too used to others backing down. But humanity wasn't afraid. Not yet. Just disoriented. Aaron watched the broadcast from Earth with a historian's eye. He saw something ancient flicker in the public response. Not outrage. Not grief. Something deeper. Something older. The veterans, long retired, began speaking again. Their voices shook with age, but burned with memory. "We buried war," one old soldier said, "but we never forgot where." In a quiet broadcast that lasted only 60 seconds, Earth's Chancellor stood before a live feed of the old Terran War Monument. Her voice was calm, controlled, almost ceremonial. "We were promised unity. We were promised protection. And yet, our children are missing, and our allies laugh." She placed her hand on the monument. Behind her, the names of the fallen shimmered. To those who think Earth is soft, remember what came before. We did not evolve to forget. We evolved to choose. And today, we choose differently. That night, the Accord's central network lit up with activity. Hidden databases began to activate. Disconnected military arrays blinked online. Lunar vaults opened. Old signals, encrypted in pre-Accord Terran battle code, rippled across the void. The Council called for patience. They reminded humanity of the laws they'd helped write. They begged for diplomacy. Earth didn't respond, because Earth was no longer speaking. It was listening to ghosts, to memories, to the echo of something terrible and righteous stirring from its slumber. Not wrath, not yet, but the slow, steady sound of war awakening. The silence after the Chancellor's speech didn't last long. Within days, Terralese Prime was confirmed empty. No bodies, no debris, no life. Surveillance satellites had been scrubbed, and data cores melted. Someone had gone to great lengths to erase every trace. But they missed one thing: A half-corrupted distress call buried in a side relay. A child's voice crying, "They're taking us." The message ignited Earth like wildfire. The population, once complacent, was now boiling with purpose. Grief turned sharp, focused. Across the inner systems, protests surged. Memorials sprang up in every city, not just for the lost, but for what humanity had willingly given up, the ability to defend itself. It wasn't rage that spread. It was shame. Collective. Heavy. Earned. The Zorak Dominion, under scrutiny, doubled down. Their leaders claimed fringe elements had acted without central command. A splinter sect, nothing more. "Why would we want your offspring?" one Zorak official said during an open session. "You breed weakness." Human diplomats walked out mid-session. No words, no rebuttals, just silence. The council interpreted it as a tantrum. What they missed was the signal buried in the gesture, an old Terran military code, once used to mark the final attempt at peace before sanctioned retaliation. Most species have forgotten what it meant. Earth hadn't. 2 weeks later, a fleet of human reconnaissance ships quietly bypassed Accord boundaries and entered Dominion space. They didn't ask permission. They didn't issue warnings. What they found confirmed everything. 3 hidden facilities in orbit around gas giants, shielded from standard scans. Inside, rows of stasis pods. Children. Human children. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Drugged. Cataloged. Branded. Some are hooked into neurological arrays. Brain mapping. Behavioral override experiments. The Dominion wasn't just abducting them. They were trying to erase them. The human recon team extracted what they could, broadcasting the findings directly to Earth's networks. The footage wasn't sanitized. It wasn't edited. It was raw, brutal, and immediate. Children, unconscious, lined up like livestock. A single word echoed across Earth's networks. Unforgivable. The Zorak Dominion issued a denial before the footage even finished uploading. They claimed the installations were rogue, that they'd launched their own investigation, that no Zorak official had authorized these acts. But by then, it didn't matter. Humanity didn't need permission to feel violated. On the surface, Earth remained quiet. No announcements, no new declarations. But deep beneath the crust, old factories came online. The Mars shipyards reopened. AI cores began coordinating logistics. The asteroid colonies, once turned into art galleries and peace retreats, began producing metal again, hyperdense alloys, hull plating, war components. The Council grew nervous. They demanded a halt. They begged for dialogue. "Let us mediate," they said. Earth didn't respond. Instead, a new signal pulsed across known space. A simple transmission on every frequency. A child's laughter distorted into static, followed by the phrase, "Retribution logged." Human colonies across the stars began preparing without orders. Citizens trained. Families volunteered, not out of hatred, but because the wound was too deep to ignore. They weren't fighting for vengeance. They were preparing for something sacred, restoration. And in all of this, not a single demand was made. No conditions, no negotiations, no ultimatums. Earth didn't ask for the return of the children, because Earth already knew where they were. And Earth wasn't going to ask. It was going to take. Aaron Vale recorded his final archive entry for the Council. No emotion, no accusations, just a single line from an old Terran philosopher. Peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the suppression of consequence. He submitted the entry and resigned. Within hours, human space went dark. Communication nodes encrypted. Trade routes severed. Embassies evacuated. It wasn't a breakdown. It was a countdown. And everyone, every system, every species, every arrogant empire that had mistaken Earth's silence for surrender, finally began to understand. Humanity hadn't forgotten how to make war. It had simply remembered what made it necessary. The first confirmed sighting came from the edge of Zorak-controlled space, a mining outpost orbiting a red dwarf. Their sensors picked up something ancient but impossibly fast. By the time they sounded the alarm, the facility had already gone dark. No explosions, no wreckage, just a silent erasure. A ghost had passed through. That ghost was the vanguard of Sol, a ship not seen in 7,000 years. Designed in the age of extinction wars, it had no crew, only a mind, human, digital, and wrathful, entombed in titanium. The Zorak called it a myth. Now it marked the beginning. Earth had not simply mobilized. It had unleashed what it had hidden, the remnants of the last war doctrine, systems designed not to win battles, but to end civilizations. For centuries, they had slumbered beneath the ice moons, inside the asteroid belt, behind the false moons of Jupiter. Now they awoke, with instructions written in blood-coded command lines older than most Accord member civilizations. On Luna, the core fleet assembly stations roared back to life. Drone workers, built to withstand radiation and time, repaired ships their own creators no longer remembered building. The Mars Defense Grid, once an orbital museum, activated orbital plasma rings. Around Earth, the sleeper arcs, once meant for evacuation, were repurposed into command ships. And then came the old names. Not just ships, but entire fleets, each a whisper from history. Hammer of Dusk, Nocturne, Woundwake, First Teeth. Their hulls were obsidian black, with no transponders, no identifiers. The Zorak called them Death Specters. Aaron Vale, no longer a historian, served as Earth's voice to no one. His messages weren't diplomatic. They were records, statements of fact. We did not want this. We did not ask for this. But we remember what was done, and we will correct it. Humanity did not march to war with speeches. It moved with precision. Fleet deployments ran through civilian AIs, logistics managed in real time across hundreds of systems. Sleeper agents within Accord space began sabotaging Zorak supply lines without lifting a weapon, just activating dormant fail-safes embedded decades ago into trade systems, algorithms, architecture. Peace had never meant unprepared. The Zorak military convened, confused. Their analysts couldn't understand how a culture that had refused violence for millennia had rebuilt a full war machine overnight. But the truth was simple. Earth had never disarmed. It had merely stored its weapons in silence. On the battlefield, the results were catastrophic. Zorak cruisers, designed for domination, found themselves disabled before they could fire a shot. Entire squadrons vanished into quantum folds weaponized by human graviton engineers. Their borders collapsed inward as Terran strike teams hit key production facilities with surgical efficiency. What terrified the Dominion most wasn't the technology, it was the intent. Human forces did not broadcast propaganda. They didn't issue threats. They made no demands. Every action was quiet, purposeful, focused. When the Zorak attempted to retaliate, they targeted civilian colonies. But there were no civilians left. Every human system had transitioned to wartime protocols. Every orbital, every station, every ship was ready. They were not playing defense. They were tightening a noose. A critical Zorak stronghold, Drazek Prime, fell in under 4 minutes. A city of 80 million watched helplessly as their defense grid collapsed from within. Human operatives didn't need bombs. They needed passwords, ones written decades ago into infrastructure partnerships. Back on Earth, the last generation of peacekeepers re-entered the war rooms. Their hair was white, their voices quiet, but their hands still knew what to do. One of them said, "It wasn't peace. It was a ceasefire, and now it's over." The council begged for mediation. Their envoys received silence in return. Silence, and one data packet. It showed a list of names. Thousands of human children. Dates, coordinates, experimental notes, all recovered from Dominion research cores. The proof was undeniable. The crimes were systemic. Approved, funded, protected. Earth wasn't at war because it wanted justice. It was at war because justice had been denied for too long. And now, every ship launched, every target eliminated, every strategic strike, all of it followed a singular guiding principle. Do not rebuild what you do not regret destroying. Humanity hadn't come to occupy. It had come to end. Zorak High Command fell in the dead of night. Not with a battle, but a blackout. Every system went offline in a synchronized cascade. Communications, power, orbital tracking, even internal AI. For 13 minutes, The most heavily fortified planet in the Dominion went dark. When the lights returned, the throne hall was empty. Every official, every general, every executive gone. No bodies, no blood, just a message left on a single functioning terminal. You stole what was irreplaceable. We took what you never valued. By then, resistance had become meaningless. Zorak forces collapsed into disarray. Their fleets, leaderless, surrendered or scattered. Some begged for asylum from their own allies. No one answered. Entire Dominion systems broke away, declaring neutrality. The fear wasn't that Earth would conquer them. It was that Earth might not even notice them as it passed through. In the center of the Dominion's last secure sector, Earth's flagship emerged. Sol's Wrath, a ship so massive its silhouette eclipsed the stars behind it. It carried no diplomats, no negotiators, only judgment. It arrived above the final containment facility where the last of the abducted children were held. The Zorak had planned a last stand. They had no chance. Every defensive satellite misfired. Every warship turned and fled. The facility's AI surrendered before human boots even touched the ground. Inside, the children were alive, malnourished, altered, but they still remembered who they were. A soldier knelt before one of them. The child, no older than 8, looked up and whispered, "You found us." Not a single word of vengeance was spoken. The humans left no message, no retaliation on the facility. They simply took their own and vanished, leaving behind only silence. Back on Earth, they did not celebrate. There were no parades, no speeches. The children were returned to families, to care, to healing. And the fleets? They returned to the vaults. Every ship sealed again. Every AI placed back into hibernation. The weapons weren't dismantled, just shelved. The Council demanded answers. They pleaded for reintegration. Earth gave them a final transmission. Peace was betrayed not by war, but by your silence. Then, one by one, humanity withdrew. From the Accord, from the treaties, from the shared technologies. They did not isolate, they disengaged. They returned home, but not in retreat. They returned knowing exactly who they were again. In the weeks that followed, systems across the galaxy shifted. Some restructured entirely to avoid humanity's path. Others sent reparations and apologies. Earth responded to none, not out of contempt, but because it had moved on. Its purpose had been fulfilled. Not revenge. Restoration. The Dominion fractured. What remained was left to deal with its own guilt, its own destruction, and the crushing realization that it had underestimated something primal. Something no weapon could match. The unbreakable, furious love of a species for its children. Aaron Vale, who had once chronicled peace, wrote one final entry. In silence, we waited. In silence, we warned. And in silence, we answered. Let the stars remember, we are not cruel, but we will not be kind to those who take from us. The galaxy would never forget the message Earth left behind. Not in words, but in action. Humanity had not returned to conquest. It had reminded the universe that patience is not weakness, and that even the gentlest hands will close into fists when pushed too far. There was no empire left to claim victory, no new borders drawn, no thrones ascended, only memory, and a single truth scorched into the foundation of every civilization that survived. Do not take from Earth what you cannot return.